Time now for the Historic Racing News Podcast. Here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Greetings, and welcome to a very special September show. We have an absolute, get this, cornucopia of subjects to talk about.
Top word.
Does that mean a lot?
Yes, Jim, it does. Yes, the colonials answering the questions again.
Yeah.
But we have a cornucopia of great stuff from the amazing prices that were paid for cars at auction in the Monterey Car Week, through some inside views about the upcoming Goodwood revival, and a conversation that Paul Jurd has had with none other than Nigel Mansell. It's all here on the Historic Racing News podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Jim Roller and Paul Jurd. And Jim, the world of high-value competition and sporting cars, I think probably it's fair to say, has been rocked by some of the amazing results from Monterey Car Week.
Before I get started on that, is how you live closer to Mr. Jurd than I do. How insufferable has he gotten since his interviews with the famous and elite?
Well, as I go down the dual carriageway from my house to his, there is now a barrier across the road with uniformed guards who come along and say, "Have you got a pass? Because if you haven't, you're not coming in."
Your name's not on the list.
Yeah.
I'll have you know, a whole 5 minutes can go past where I don't bring it up in conversation.
Monterey Car Week, amid many questions over the world economy, and well, the folks in Monterey, in fine American fashion, said, "Hold my beer," because this year's volume of $432.6 million in sales, give or take some late sales and some private things done afterwards and that sort of stuff, that marks the second highest total ever recorded, and the third time in the last 5 years that Car Week, the 5 auction houses of Car Week, have topped the $400 million mark.
That's ridiculous amounts of money, isn't it?
Amazing money.
Pretty amazing. Now, as is normally the case, RM Sotheby's led the way, $164 million in sales. The top seller was a one-of-a-kind Ferrari Daytona SP3 tailor-made. It's a one-off, made specifically for this auction by Ferrari. The sale price was donated to the Ferrari Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit here in the United States. That car sold for $26 million.
And this is specifically built for that auction.
Yes, it was SP3 tailor-made. That was the name of it. And you can see some great pictures of it on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles, and I have a whole video recap to go with this report that you can see on Historic Racing News Chronicles. We do, in that piece, as we will hear, focus on competition cars. RM Sotheby's sold 13 competition cars, totaling $9.7 million in their sales total. The top seller was a gorgeous Porsche, 1960 Porsche 718 RS60 Spider with coachwork by Wendler. That topped $3.5 million. And a whole brace of Alfa Romeos from the Quadrifoglio collection. Top seller was a beautiful prototype, a 1968 T33-2 Daytona that hammered for $1.16 million. The car that didn't sell was another very rare. It wasn't quite a one-off, but it's a notable car, the 1955 Ferrari 375 Plus Spider by Sutton. This was a car that Dan Gurney and a bunch of other famous Americans in period drove out west. That car did not sell, but it did reach $5.2 million in bidding. So it was a bit of a surprise.
So what was the reserve? Yeah.
Probably 5.5 to be honest with you. I mean that's. And what's interesting is when you watch the sales online, you can tell when they're close to the reserve because sometimes the auctioneer, if he's really good, will say, I just need one more bid. Get me to 5.3, and sometimes it works, and sometimes
the absolute king of that, of course, is Charlie Ross, who is the auctioneer for Goodings, and we've had him on the show a number of times, and if you watch your intro piece that you put together for HRN Chronicles, which features a lot of Charlie, and he's good
value.
He's just brilliant. But he will squeeze that last $100,000 or whatever it is. As you say, I just need one more bid.
Speaking of Charlie, good segue, Paul. Gooding Christie's topped 127 million in total sales, so Charlie was quite busy. Top seller was a 1961 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase California Spider Competizione that hammered for over $25 million. Now, the car was presented in street appearance, but it had multiple race wins on its resume when it came to America originally, another West Coast race car. And so it made it the top-selling competition car of the week at $25 million. 11 of the 15 other competition cars offered by Gooding sold, with totals topping an additional $14 million. Tops amongst those were a NART 1973 Ferrari 365 GTB/4. This was the car we talked about in the preview of Monterey, the Series 3 model, very rare. Only 4 of them were made. That car sold for $8 million. 5 cars with significant pedigree from Indianapolis sold. The 1973 Indy winner did sell for just over $1 million. And the car that I found fascinating, the Miller 91 front-wheel drive car, also did well. It was a 3-times Indy competitor, multiple record setter, if you remember, at Brooklands and at Monterey. And that sold for just under £700,000 or $700,000. So probably about £6, but yeah, no, it did well. Interesting, guys. It was a rough week for pre-war Bugattis. There were 4 Grand Prix cars offered with various provenance, and none of them sold.
That is interesting, isn't it?
And I think it speaks a little bit to how some of the market is starting to skew a little younger. And one of the auction houses that really took advantage of the supercar surge was Bonham's. They used the sale of 7 of the modern supercars to crush their dismal 2024 numbers by over $32.8 million with a 2025 total of $44 million. They had roughly $11 million in sales a year ago. The top seller was a 2020 Bugatti Divo, and that sold for $8.5 million. 7 of the 8 competition cars sold. The top seller was a 1985 Audi Quattro S1 E2, which I thought was very cool. It hammered at $1.7 million. That's the good news. Do I know the bad news?
Go on.
The car had sold for $300,000 more than that in 2022. So somebody took a bath on that one.
Yeah, and that's happening a bit, isn't it? Now that you see,
a little bit.
Cars and because I never throw anything away. I have the old motorsport magazines and things, and sometimes you'll see ads in the back of this month's magazine, and it'll say so and so's for sale for 1.2 million, and you think, I seem to remember that was for sale a year ago for 1.5, and sure enough, it's it is, and some people do take a haircut on that.
Ex-Bondurant Corvette sold for $500,000. And an interesting one, a 1968 Trans Am Camaro titled Mysterious 13 sold. and it sold for just under $300,000. And what made this car special? You may have heard of the infamous Smokey Yunick, the NASCAR builder. Well, Smokey built this Camaro, acid dipped the body panels, used special glass that was lighter to lower the weight of the car. Thus the name Mysterious 13. And it almost got to $300,000, but did sell for just under that. Wow. And finally, this is something that the power of provenance, I guess. 1990 Honda 3.5-liter V10 RA100 F1 engine sold for just over $250,000. It came in this beautiful case, and it was all disassembled, and it's absolutely beautiful. The reason the engine was so special, it was the last Honda. It's RA100E-V805. It was the last Honda that Ayrton Senna used in his McLaren MP45B at Japan and Australia. That last year he was there. So that made that engine very valuable, apparently. And one important non-seller, 1983 Porsche Fab Car 935-84, the ex-Bob Aiken car Lady, that car that was built by the folks in Atlanta. For the second time this year, it did not meet reserve. This time it didn't even get to $1 million in bidding. It stopped at $950,000. So they're going to have to rethink their value structure on that car. I think if they really.
And is that the Coca-Cola car?
Yes, that's the Coca-Cola with a little bit of a slant nose. It was built at the end of during the '83 season, used at the end of '83 and in '84 by Dave Clement Fab Car. This was after Porsche had quit making 935s. So these guys that were Porsche devotees like Aiken, until they could get their 962s, they had to come up with their own devices to try and make 935s better, develop them more, and so they started building their own. And the interesting thing is, for somebody like me who is of a certain era and who happens to love Porsche 935s, I would think that $1 million for that car would be a great buy. But apparently the current owners don't. So it's something that as a Porsche 935 fan, I would dearly love to own, but not at those prices, I don't think.
I find it amazing, Jim, that all of the stuff that you talked about, or nearly all the stuff you talked about, is $1 million here, $2 million there, $20 million somewhere else. That if we'd been sitting here 15 years ago, that if you were talking about a car selling for $1 million, that was a shed load of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Well, here's an example of that very fact. Broad Arrow, 2005 Maserati MC12 Stradale, which was the car that Maserati built to try and race in FIA GT, sold at a record $5.2 million. It's the second most expensive Maserati ever sold at public auction. And it helped Broad Arrow get to $57 million for the week. Broad Arrow sold two cars that had a very cool off-road provenance. Lonnie Unser, that's the daughter of Al Unser, sold her 2014 Porsche 911 Pikes Peak car, $230,000 for that. And an ex-Walter World Jolly Club Fiat 131 Abarth sold for $218,000. So rally cars had a little bit of play at Broad Arrow. Unfortunately, the Orica Viper that we previewed and the Kramer CK5 Le Mans Racer didn't sell. Both of them topped out just short of $1 million. So obviously the reserve for those cars was over $1 million. Mecum, the folks that normally have big numbers, They normally do a smaller volume. It's only a 2-day auction out at Monterey. They did 45 million though, and their top seller was that beautiful, another Coca-Cola liveried car. Only this one sold, and it was the 1969 Dodge Hemi Daytona NASCAR machine. It had all that pre-event buzz. $1.1 million. So that car did pretty well. The disappointment for Mecum was a 1959 center seat Porsche 718 RSK. That car would have been, if it had it sold, it would have been Mecum's top car of the week, and bidding for that stalled at $3.2 million. I suspect the reserve was somewhere up around 3.5, given what other cars of that nature have sold for. So all in all, it was it was an interesting car week. One of the things that our friends at K500.com pointed out is that as the age of the buyers is getting a little bit younger, the age of the cars sold is also getting younger. So the average year of the cars sold in 2023 was 1950. The average year of the cars sold a year ago was 1968. And this year, the average year was 1984. Now, most of that is because so many of those 2020 to 2025 supercars, the Bugatti Chirons and the cars like that, they're really starting to make their mark on these auctions.
If that continues, in 3 years' time, it'll be yesterday's car.
Yeah. Well, it will seem like yesterday's car to you and me, Paul, but it's...
Good point, yes.
Yeah,
yesterday's car to me is 25 years ago, yeah, that's true.
So after Monterey, we're now over $1.6 billion in sales for the year. Got some important sale auctions coming up this fall, so it should be pushing towards $2 billion again, as we did a year ago. And
obviously on this side of the pond, we have the revival auction from Bonham's coming up. So I hope you'll.
That's one of the biggies.
You'll come back and talk to us about that in the next show.
And there's a couple of auctions that are tied to Formula One races in the Middle East. So there's still going to be some more high dollar movement, I think, in this calendar year. There's always a little lull in September and October, and then things kick back in right before the Thanksgiving holidays over here.
Now, Paul Jurd, you are a circuit racing man, body and soul, and all credit to you for that. But I'm interested in your memories of something which perhaps isn't at the front of everybody's thought process, and that is the whole thing of Formula 3000.
Formula 3000. It replaced Formula 2 in '85. Went all the way through to 2004, where it was replaced by GP2 because they still weren't allowed to use that Formula 2 name. And it was exactly what it said on the tin, wasn't it? 3-litre engines. It was primarily as well a home for the old DFE once it was no longer wanted in Formula 1, but very, very much a stepping stone formula. If you were good in Formula 3000, you were looking to go into Formula 1. And in fact, there's only 3 Formula 3000 champions who never did a Formula 1 race out of 20 odd years. So that's pretty good going. But it was also a stepping stone for the teams. You had teams who went from Formula 3000 into Formula 1. You had Onyx, who were the 87 championships raced in Formula 1. Pacific won the title in 91 with Christian Fittipaldi, went into Formula 1. And of course, Jordan Racing, Eddie Jordan, champion in 89 with Jean Alesi, went into Formula 1. So it was very much a stepping stone. Last 3 teams titles, last 2 drivers titles, Arden International, Christian Horner. Where did Christian Horner end up? Formula 1.
On the street.
On the street, yeah. I suspect you were never a fan, Jim, to be honest.
And Christian Horner, of course, bought the team from Helmut Marko.
Yes, that's
right.
It was
originally
they won a championship with Marco's name on the team. Yeah,
but it was a truly international series.
Web we weave.
It was a truly international series. But Jim, did it have a profile in the US?
Well, yes and no. It did for me because I worked for a television show that covered it. So So for us, we promoted the heck out of it, but it didn't have nearly the footprint that it did in Europe. It was, again, it was the diehard fans in the United States that really thought the most of it. Its earlier predecessors probably had more cachet in the United States than Formula 3000 did, but I thought it was a great series. Again, this is, but I'm biased and twisted. So,
well, I'll go with the twisted bit. I'm not sure about the bias, but I've been talking to a man who loves Formula 3000 beyond measure. Now, if you were to ask 100 motorsport people which is your favourite single-seater formula, I don't think that Formula 3000 would be at the very top of many people's lists. But its a light shone brightly for many years, from 1985 to 2004, in fact. And I'm joined by James Newbold, who's going to talk about all the various aspects of a formula which, sadly, no longer exists. James, welcome to the show. We're looking back through rose-tinted glasses, perhaps? Or was Formula 3000 as good as it now seems when we look back at it?
Thank you very much for having me on, Paul. I'm very biased, obviously, because I've just written a book documenting the history of Formula 3000. And in my view, yes, there are a lot of elements to it that deserve credit. It was a category where manufacturers competed against each other, not only in chassis, but in terms of engine manufacturers as well. You had lots of tuners that were contributing. Right at the start, you had a tyre war as well in 1985. So yeah, it was an area where a lot of engineers and designers really cut their teeth and were able to effectively apply their trade in what was then a mini Formula One category. Between 85 and 1995, it was an open category. You could, bring different combinations of chassis and engine, and it then went single make from 1996 until its conclusion. And I think people can tend to look at it almost as a formula of two halves. It was very much rebooted, and a lot of the charm, you could say, maybe disappeared from 96 onwards, when it became more akin to what we see across motorsport now, in having just a car package that you have to optimize and try and get the best out of. But I think, while it wasn't perfect, clearly I'm sure there'll be things we'll go on to discuss in terms of promotion and things like that. It was a category that a lot of people who participated in remember very fondly.
Yeah, and if we look back to those times, even in those times, there were lots of ways that an aspiring Formula One driver might try and make his or her mark on the world of motorsport. Where did Formula 3000 fit into that?
Well, it was the direct replacement, really, for European Formula 2. Of course, Formula 2, the engines, I think, were the big issue, really, that meant that championship could no longer really sustain itself. By the end, you had March and Ralt were the two main manufacturers, but you had competitive offerings from Martini and the like. But essentially, if you didn't have a Honda engine, and they were unfortunately pretty much the exclusive domain of the Works Ralt team, you weren't going to win. Anyone who had a BMW engine was lagging behind. And as Christian Danner said for the book, we needed something different. It was about time for a change. So it sort of slotted in there quite nicely as the direct replacement. There was a surfeit of Cosworth DFV engines that were no longer in use for Formula One, and it was a very neat solution for a while. As the years continued, Formula 3000 was very much cemented as the main Formula One sport category. It went from a championship that had a few standalone races and the Po Grand Prix and events like Enna. They went to Helsinki and a few curious places like Albacete, to then having an absolutely entirely Formula One support based calendar from 1998 onwards. Unfortunately, it did sort of start to fall by the wayside a little bit. Being a single make category, arguably you're only as good as your car, and there were other championships that started to come along, like the Dallara Nissan Championship, with a car that had significantly better downforce. Formula One at the time was a category where, yes, there was huge engine power, but downforce was king, as arguably it has been probably for more than 40 years. And so, there were sort of criticism coming along, really, that Formula 3000's chassis, which were produced by Lola, were perhaps not really relevant enough to be what aspiring Formula One drivers wanted. And so, it maybe started to struggle a little bit then as towards the end of the tenure of 3000, championships that offered maybe a different route, that were maybe a little bit cheaper because they weren't on the Formula One support package, and as we all know, you have to pay a premium for that, came along and started to maybe divulge the pool of well-backed drivers. So yeah, by the end, unfortunately, the grids were a little bit on the slim side. But I think during that period, it could hold its head up as the premier training category for Formula One drivers. There were people that skipped it, Jenson Button and Kimi Räikkönen probably being two of the most famous. But if you could cut it in Formula 3000, then you were, you had a very good chance of either being picked up by a Formula One team or a leading outfit in IndyCars or somewhere else.
What made you fall in love with Formula 3000?
That's a very good question, because I never went to a Formula 3000 race. I'm 30.
No.
Yeah. I'm 31, and I didn't go to a race for the first time until 2005. DTM at Brands Hatch was the first race I ever attended, so I missed seeing Formula 3000 in the flesh. But I did watch the highlights that they produced on TV, and I just sort of quite enjoyed the colourful liveries and things. So that was my main experience of it growing up. But as I became a motor racing journalist and sort of gravitated towards things that were perhaps maybe lesser known, Formula 3000 really appealed to me as something where so many amazing stories happened that just aren't particularly well documented. Yeah. Formula One is uber well documented. To find anything that hasn't really been talked about before, you have to dig quite deep. But there was an awful lot of, really interesting stories that I just, over time became aware of and thought actually telling this story of this championship would be an interesting project, shall we say, to do. And here we are now. I sort of started it in 2020 when lockdown came along. Just had a baby, and so it was a very, very weird time, spending a lot of time indoors. And so I started this project of telling Formula 3000's history, and I hope that people enjoy it.
Well, I think I'm going to feel about 250 years old at this point, because I actually went to that first ever Formula 3000 race at Silverstone.
And you got very wet, I imagine.
Yes, I did. I did buy myself a grandstand seat, but nonetheless, yes, it was an interesting one, because I don't think I was alone in thinking that this was going to be kind of the poor man's Formula One in some ways, and on that first season we had a Tyrrell or two, arrows, and other things. It didn't evolve that way, did it? It evolved into something else.
First race actually was a very significant one in a lot of respects, because it did set out from a very early point that yes, you could be on the grid if you had an old Formula One car, but that perhaps wasn't the best way to go. And I think a lot of people were surprised by that. For the book, I interviewed Kees van der Grint, who later became known as the Bridgestone tyre guru for Ferrari and Michael Schumacher. And he, at the time, was an integral part of the Baron Tyrrell team that you mentioned there, running Roberto Moreno. And he explained, that one of the reasons they picked the Tyrrell is it was the most recent design to accommodate a DFV. And you think, well, actually, that's very logical. But there were lots of things that made it a little bit tricky. So, running on different tyre sizes, for example, just small things that you wouldn't immediately think about. It just... That first year in particular, March had the numerical advantage, so perhaps it isn't too much of a surprise that March prevailed, but it just very quickly became the route that people had to take was get a customer racing car manufacturer that is producing these things in bulk, because it probably would be a bit less expensive. I mean, actually, that's a good point. When I spoke to Mike Earl, I said, did you not consider this for Onyx? Obviously, he was the March factory team, so it was going to be a little bit difficult. But he did say that they explored going with a McLaren, but the thing that stopped them was the balance sheet every time one was crashed.
Yes, I'm sure that the Formula One teams looked on it as a profit centre in its own right, perhaps, which perhaps wasn't the right way.
But the thing was, they didn't really have enough manpower. That was the thing, to properly support Formula 3000 teams that wanted to run their cars. Actually, going back to Baron Tyrrell again, that was the big exception in that for the first race, I'm going to have to check exactly who was sent down to support. I have a feeling it was Brian Lyles and Roger Hill that was sent by Ken Tyrrell to help the team, but that was only on a temporary basis, and so it wasn't like teams could just suddenly funnel staff. Obviously, Formula One teams back then were far smaller than they are now, when you're talking about 500 and 600 people, that actually, to comply with cost cap things, then maybe now they would be funneled in the direction of junior teams, but that just wasn't the case then.
No, that's clearly very much the case. Now, it started off, as we said, with lots of different chassis one way or another, but then it became what was effectively in some ways a one-make formula. And do you see that as being a positive or a negative?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, I asked that very question to a lot of people, and the ones that I sort of took most stock in what they said was, those who had straddled both eras. So, drivers like Mark Goosens and Kenny Brack, for example, who'd been winners in 1995 and then continued into the new era engineers and team bosses. And there's a real split of opinion between those who mourned the loss of the creativity, what it meant essentially for the wider industry that then started to maybe follow suit, compared to, there were a few pragmatists that said, well, it just maybe wasn't going to survive if we continued down that path. But that said, there are people that say, well, we went down this single make route, but it still wasn't cheap enough. It's only worth doing a single make category if you make it properly affordable. That said, having thrown in loads of caveats, the first champion of the single make 3000 era was Jörg Müller and the RSM Marco team, that were running a very small budget, a very small team of a couple of weekend warriors essentially helping out the very few full-time staff they had. Jörg Müller actually worked on his own car, a real throwback to decades gone past, even in 1996. So you did get teams that could compete. Nordic, for example, in 2001 had only really won. I think they'd won one race in the open era, with Lola in 1995, and they'd gone with Lola precisely because they thought we could work with a manufacturer that could allow us to maybe beat Reynard, that had more customers, and having a closer relationship for Nordic, they thought that would be the way forward. So there were things that were lost, I think, clearly. You can't argue that, looking at things today, engineers are not really getting the chance to design anything until they have worked, for however many years building up their experience, and then they tend to get shoehorned into being a real expert in designing, front wing end plates, for example, rather than having a real, if they're joining a Formula One team, rather than being able to have an oversight of the whole car. So clearly there were things that were lost. You could argue that yes, it was maybe the right choice to go down to preserve the formula. And in the late 90s, there were some absolutely stonking grids of 26 was what it was eventually capped at, but in 1999, for example, you had more than 40 cars that were attempting to enter. So there was still phenomenal interest after this point. I think it just maybe fell a little bit of a victim to not keeping up with Formula One trends in a way that Dallara and Nissan did. You could say that maybe that's a result of going one make, but I don't know that you can completely blame it on that.
It's interesting that it kind of had a foot in both camps, didn't it? That on one side it was real grown-up single-seater racing, but you had, as you say, the weekend warriors, you had a lot of renter drivers, you had quite a few people perhaps who shouldn't have been there, but amongst all the stars. Is that a fair analysis?
I probably wouldn't say there was that many people who shouldn't have been there. I mean, Severino Nardozzi would probably fit into that category. But there probably weren't too many of his ilk. I think, it was a serious category for, serious drivers that in Formula 3 days, they'd maybe had one or two opportunities per year to race against drivers from other championships. Of course, in those days you had the British Formula 3, French, German, Italian, and so on, rather than the more merged European outlook of today. And aside from the Zandvoort Masters, Macau, and the Monaco F3 support race, they didn't really have that many opportunities to race against each other. Formula 3000 was where you could really stand out from the crowd and make a name for yourself, and a lot of drivers were able to do that. Yes, maybe not all of them had the success in Formula One. When you're talking about champions, that is, it was only really Juan Pablo Montoya, Olivier Panis, and Jean Alesi that were actually able to win a race in Formula One after winning the 3000 championship. But you did have drivers, Damon Hill, world champion, Fernando Alonso, world champion, that raced in Formula 3000 and cut their teeth there, and people that won the Indianapolis 500, Gilles de Ferran, Kenny Brack, won Le Mans, Tom Christensen, Alan McNish, and even, you look a couple of years ago, Jose Maria Lopez winning for Toyota was in the final year of Formula 3000. So, yes, for as long as Fernando Alonso remains in Formula One and people like Jose Maria Lopez and Sebastian Bourdais keep racing in contemporary sports cars, you can say, that Formula 3000's legacy lives on.
Well, that's great. Talking of legacy, what do you believe is the legacy that Formula 3000 leaves us after its demise?
That's a good question. You could say that it's the drivers that went through it, that learned lessons that meant they were able to establish themselves either in Formula One or other categories. There's countless people that we could mention there. Teams like Jordan Grand Prix, for example, is a great example. Would they have been able to become a underdog challenging for the 1999 World Championship had it not been for Formula 3000? Arguably not. Paul Stewart Racing obviously morphed into Stewart Grand Prix, and today is Red Bull Racing. So lots of teams that went through Formula 3000 on the way up and had a huge impact on Formula One. You could talk about designers and engineers. Gary Anderson, for example, designed a lot of brilliant Formula One cars. He was instrumental in helping Roberto Moreno to winning the 1988 Formula 3000 title in the Bromley Reynard. Multifaceted, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's across a broad spectrum, isn't it? And I think that's interesting in itself. Now, I love the book. I think it's going to become, for a start, the reference point for people to be looking for anything Formula 3000. But it's also just a very good read. I love your stories in it. I love the insights and the views. Where can people get the book from, James?
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. Thank you. It's available from. It's published by Evro Publishing, so you can buy it direct from there and any really reputable bookstore. I would hope.
Good, yes. If they consider themselves reputable, then they should have your book. everopublishing.com is where they can get it from, or as you say, any decent motoring bookstore. Price is £75. James, thank you very much indeed for coming on. I keep on going back to your book, which is, I think, always a good sign that there's something more to read. So congratulations on that. Good luck with it, and thanks for your time today.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast, a copyrighted presentation of historic racing news in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited.
The Historic Racing News office is very close to Goodwood Motor Circuit, which is just as well because there have been 4 test days over the last couple of weeks, which Goodwood were kind enough to let me attend, which was great because you can find lots of pictures.
Build a wall high enough to keep you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm just being mean.
We like being
and jealous, and very jealous.
That's what it hides, really, isn't it?
On your...
Yes. No, I took lots of photos and a few videos, and they're all up on our Facebook page. So do have a look at those because there's some interesting stuff. And I've also got invited into the hallowed portals of Goodwood House itself to find out just what's happening for members of the Goodwood Road Racing Club. Now, Goodwood means all sorts of things to all sorts of different people. It means horse racing to a lot of people and has done for centuries. It's the house and the surrounding parkland. There's golf, a very, very popular and extensive golf course. There's a fitness centre, there's a gym, there's even a farm shop. But for most of us, the rest of us, it's all about cars and motorsport. And that I am joined by the GRRC manager, the Goodwood Road Racing Club manager, Josh Parsons, who runs the club for us die-hard fans and for the motoring community as a whole. Josh, welcome very much to the show. We're only a week away now from the exciting world of Goodwood Revival. I guess that's sort of, you're going to be looking at that as being exciting but scary.
Quite. Well, thanks for having me first and foremost, Paul, and absolutely thrilled to sit down with you. Yes, I think in a nutshell, excited with a touch of trepidation perhaps. We all in the team very much look forward to Goodwood Revival every year, and plans have been underway now for the past sort of 18 months, 2 years. So very much looking forward to seeing lots of members and very much looking forward to going racing.
And you say that it is 12 to 24 months of planning to get this thing together.
It is, and it takes a village, as they say. There is multiple teams at Goodwood that work on all the various elements of the revival, whether that's putting the race grids together, inviting the teams, working with the drivers, all the way through to sort of building all of the sort of hospitality areas and the operational side of things, as well as my team who help curate the members' experience.
Now, you talk about your team. How many people are actually running the Goodwood Road Racing Club?
Together, there's just 7 of us in total, which sometimes people are a little bit surprised at. So we're a busy engine room working throughout the year, working on a number of things, the revival for members meeting and Festival of Speed, as well as a whole number of events and looking after members all the way through the year as well.
And you say about members throughout the year. You've got members all over the world. Literally all over the world, and many of them will turn up for revival particularly. And I know a good many of my friends who are members who will turn up from Australia, from the US, and it must be quite nice for you and the team to be able to put faces to names.
Absolutely. Revival is always quite special because you'll have people that make the journey far and wide to come to Revival each year, and that might be the only time that we see them. So you do have this contingent of members that you see once a year in September. And it's funny you say that about people travelling. It was, I think, a couple of years ago, His Grace the Duke was telling a story after Revival, saying that he had bumped into someone, and he always sort of spends time walking around the event and chatting to people, and he heard an interesting accent, and it was a couple of friends that come over from New Zealand, and he said, it's fantastic that you've come over. Is this part of a wider trip to the UK, spending some time exploring the UK? And they turned around to him and sort of looked at him a little bit bemused and said, no, we've just come for the Revival. So they travelled all that way from New Zealand to come for 3 days of racing. But I think it's quite special, and it shows what it means to a lot of people.
So Josh, I suppose the big question is, a GRRC member arrives at the gate, and we know, because you've gone public on the fact that that's going to be all hippie and Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, as you walk in to Revival. So I'm not breaking any taboos there. But somebody walks in. How does a GRRC member make the very best of their day or days at the Goodwood Revival?
There's nothing quite like it. That moment that you arrive, you walk through the gates and you're transported back in time. The quality of racing, the cars that you're seeing in the paddock, the very way that people sort of nature, body language, the way they interact with each other changes because they're sort of dressed up and they're harping back to days gone by. It's always very interesting that you see, everybody's got such busy lives these days when you're out and about, but you come to Revival and all of a sudden everyone's holding the door open for one another. They're asking each other to, no, please go in front of me. So it really does sort of transport you back in time. And I think that's what makes the whole event so special. It's, GRC members are able to head into site an hour ahead of the public, which is fantastic for getting that spot, your favourite spot for watching the racing. I'd firstly encourage all members to make sure that they're wearing their badge. That really is the sort of gateway into accessing their benefits. And also to make sure that they've booked their paddock passes, which will entitle them access to the central paddocks to get up and close to those fantastic race cars that are featured there. As we've talked about, they'll also have the opportunity to make use of those club enclosures just to have a moment to relax throughout the day. And really they offer a great opportunity to watch the racing at Lavan Bank or provide some nice shelter. There's also a great opportunity for any members coming on Friday to have a little look at the pre-look at the Bonhams auction, which will take place on Saturday, to see the lots that will be up for sale for the weekend. And then on Saturday, we're delighted that we're having a members grid walk ahead of the Jim Clark celebration. So please do make sure that you get involved in that and have the opportunity to get on track just before that really momentous occasion. It really has got something for everyone, which is quite cliche, but you certainly get that from the conversations that you have with members across the weekends and the sort of various ways in which they enjoy Revival.
I think that's a very, very good point, the various ways. Some people are coming just for the glitz and the glamour, and maybe don't even see a racing car over the course of the weekend. Other people are avid petrol heads and will stand there by the fence or in the grandstand and watch everything from start to finish. How many members does GRRC have?
So in total, we have about 8,500 members that we look after. But with the wider club and the fellowship, which is sort of the entryway in to membership, we look after in total about 20,000 people. So it keeps us very busy, and we're very, very fortunate that so many members are so enthused and engaged. And as we've touched upon already, we get to see these members at Revival. So yeah, it's as I said, a small team looking after a fair amount of people.
Yeah, 7 people looking after 20,000. I just love the fact that you have the fellowship, which is effectively the waiting area for membership of GRRC. And that is just so Goodwood, that you have your own membership of people who are on a waiting list. I think is great, and people enjoy it, and they wear their badges with pride and everything that goes with that. But we've got all that coming up in a few days' time. But besides that, there is so much more to GRRC and to Goodwood generally, but to GRRC in particular, isn't there?
There absolutely is, and touching upon your point before, the fellowship very much is the next generation of membership, and it's so lovely to see that we've got so many members with children or grandchildren that they're trying to get involved in the world of historic motorsport and all things automotive. So we do really try and cater, as well as our sort of headline Goodwood Motorsport moments, to have a number of ways to get involved with the club throughout the year. So we host around 70 to 80 events each year that members can come and get involved in, and whether that's at Goodwood, so things like track days or sort of grassroots motorsport events, all the way through to sort of Formula One factory visits or race preparer workshops where we sort of take members to have a peek behind the curtain. But then we also really like to sort of give people the opportunity to get their pride and joy, their cars out of the garage and make use of them. So whether that's displaying them outside of Goodwood House at our lovely members open day in August, which is a sort of lovely car display, or driving them out on the road. I've recently got returned from a trip in Northumberland for a weekend of driving there, and we do more extended tours across the UK and in Europe as well.
And you do things like the auto solo and other things like that. There really is a huge amount of different things over a very wide spectrum. And I think that's something which really impresses me about the Goodwood Road Racing Club, that you've not only got, obviously, the headline events, but you've also got things like the auto solo, where somebody can turn up in their Mini and hair around the car park by Woodcote, or and generally do that, or do a track day. But then you've got those high prestige events of the summer ball and the Christmas ball, which are black tie events in the house where people dress up and polish their shoes.
Yeah, we absolutely always love an excuse for a glass of champagne. But speaking more than that, really, all of these events are about bringing people together so they can share their sort of shared passion for whether that's Goodwood, motorsport, automotive, and just be around like-minded people. So absolutely, if it's a case of getting your car out on track or out on road, or perhaps just coming together and enjoying some fine food and good company, there's just lots of opportunity for people to get involved to sort of fill that gap between those Goodwood motorsport events. And we're very much also very conscious of trying to get out across the country and reaching into Europe as well. So we're not always expecting people to come to us. We can certainly get to them.
Tell me about some of those regional drives that you've done.
Well, as I said, I've just come back from the sort of north of England. We were in Northumberland and Yorkshire for the weekend. And the regional drives are designed, as I said, to get people out in their cars. But really more than that are to bring people together. And we effectively put together a route in an area. This year we've done 10 of them, literally top to bottom of the UK and into Scotland as well, and parts of Wales. And we the events team here, who are very adept at planning some brilliant drives in some roads that maybe people wouldn't necessarily know about. We put together a route, we provide a start and end location, and then it's an opportunity for members to go out and drive with other members in some beautiful scenic countryside. And then hopefully at the end of it, raise a glass of something cold to the day and have a good chat about everyone's vehicles.
That sounds fabulous, but it's not, let me stress, about people necessarily turning up in their Porsches or their Ferraris. That people turn up in all sorts of stuff.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the event so magical. You'll have everything there, from somebody using their everyday car to, you could be turning up in a lovely classic Mini, through to a Morris Minor, through to a McLaren modern day supercar. We could have a pre-war vehicle. It really isn't necessarily about what you're coming in. It's about being able to sort of stand there and appreciate different and interesting machinery, and just for the sheer love of driving, really. They really are fantastic events, and that's what makes them so interesting, is when you turn up in that car park and everyone's arrived having a coffee and a bit of tyre kicking, and you've just got this brilliant mixture of all different machinery, and that's what makes it quite special.
And I think that's again something that's special. I'm looking forward to Revival again, that you have this area called Lavant Bank, which is halfway down the Lavant Straight, and that there is a members' car park on there. And the variety of different cars on there is incredible. I mean, I appreciate there is very limited amount of parking, and therefore it is people who are proud of their cars, but you'll get everything from a 1924 Rolls-Royce through to something, Lotus Cortina from 1965, and pretty much everything in between.
Absolutely. Lavant Bank is always it's a joy of mine, and something that I'll make time to go up and see each day. You're absolutely right. It's you get a fantastic array of vehicles, and it's a brilliant place to watch the racing as well, as the cars come down the Lavant Straight. So yeah, particularly good on the Friday evening to watch the racing in the sunset race. But yeah, that car park is always very interesting to go and see. So I'd encourage any members to go up there and have a look. If you've not had the opportunity, it's certainly worthwhile doing.
Absolutely, and I think it's probably worth mentioning now that there are a number of different oases, I think is probably the right way of putting it, which members will be able to, I was going to say hide, but I don't mean hide. I mean that there are plenty of places that people can go to and enjoy maybe a coffee and a sandwich or something. But just tell me about the different areas that GRRC members will be able to enjoy at Revival.
You're quite right. I quite like an oasis, and perhaps, maybe take the load off slightly. A core benefit of GRC membership is we have enclosures across the event, and at Revival we have the most enclosures we have for all Goodwood events, and that we have 6 spaces where members can come and relax, have a coffee, sit down, and these enclosures are very much designed to make members' experience and day that little bit easier. So as I said, we have 6, and they all have their own identity, Lavant Bank being one of them up on that Lavant Straight there, and that's very much themed in sort of wartime. You've got fantastic, sandbags and memorabilia there as well. Our largest facility is the garage facility over on the air side on the infield, and that's located near the Drivers Club, and that's all themed like a vintage garage. And then we have a couple of others as well. Members can make use of the aerodrome roof, which is a great vantage spot to take in the racing at a higher level. We also have the Caterpillar Club, which we introduced a couple of years ago, which has beautiful silk parachutes. The Caterpillar Club was a club that members of the RAF were indoctrinated in after they'd done their first parachute jump. So like with all of the areas at Revival, a lot of theming going on. And then there's a number of other areas as well, which we have the pit stop, which is also open to our fellowship members. That's a great opportunity for members to meet friends who might not quite be in their membership yet, but they're in the fellowship. And then we have our uplifted facility, which is newly designed this year, the Gordon Pavilion, which was formerly known as the March Enclosure. That's had a redesign and will celebrate the Scottish heritage of the Duke of Richmond. And that has fantastic views of the start-finish line with the grandstand as well. So a lot of areas for members to make use of, and very much as you said, they're designed that members can come in, have a sit down. It's entitled for them and a guest when showing their badge on the door. And we have sort of private toilets here, bar facilities, restaurants, etc., just to provide that little oasis away from the hub and the buzz of the revival.
You're going to use that oasis thing now, aren't you? I can see that. But yeah, I think that's part of it. But there was one event this year which I wasn't green with envy. I'd gone way past green. I don't know what the next step is, but you took some very, very lucky people to Indianapolis for the 500 this year. Just talk me through that event again, and forgive me if I turn a shade of whatever it is as you're doing it.
Yeah, we're very, very fortunate at Goodwood that the Duke and the teams at Goodwood have a very good little black book of connections, and we really like to make use of those to put together some fantastic motorsport trips. So this year, you're quite right, we went to the Indy 500. First time for me, and was just absolutely fantastic. We've done similar events at the Monaco Historic, at Le Mans, and at the Daytona 500, and we're always planning away on different trips. But this trip, as you say, was quite special. We worked very closely with Team Penske, RCR Racing, and Arrow McLaren to put together a really sort of well-rounded and I suppose quite special trip where we had sort of garage access to the teams. We had some interviews with the team principals, met the drivers, and actually I couldn't quite believe this in the end, but we're invited to the drivers' celebration dinner on the Monday after the race. So yes, it was quite special. It was one of those sort of pinch me moments, but to sort of be in the paddock and in the garages and on the track before the race, and also just to experience that pack of cars coming through at sort of 250, 60 miles an hour is just unbelievable, as well as all of the pomp and ceremony that goes along with racing in America.
You know, there's not many people I'm envious of, Josh, but I think definitely that falls into that category. And I can only say that it's something which only Goodwood could carry off. You've mentioned that the membership is fully subscribed and has been for many years, and that there is naturally a churn, but people can still join and be part of the fellowship and form part of the queue.
Yes, it'd be great. If people have any questions about the fellowship and want to talk to us at Revival, we're just conveniently located on the infield side of the pedestrian tunnel, where people can sign up and talk to us about the benefits of joining the fellowship and then moving on to membership when they're able to do so. It's about a 3 to 4 year wait at the moment, but fellowship is very much designed to give people that sort of taster of Goodwood Road Racing Club membership and provide some benefits while they're waiting. So do come and see us, or head to the website where you can find all of the information necessary.
And we also mustn't forget, sitting here in Goodwood House and overlooking the cricket pitch, which is at the front of Goodwood House, it's not widely known, and it's a bit of a secret. But tell us about the cricket match.
Our worst, best kept secret. Yes, on Thursday, there is a cricket match that the Duke hosts for some of the drivers across the weekend. It's a lovely Goodwood tradition that we have a cricket match outside of Goodwood House to start the Goodwood Revival. And you'll see many sort of famous faces doing their best to get a six and win out there. But it's a really lovely moment where GRC members can come along and watch the cricket match.
And certainly I'll be there because as a lousy cricket player, I think I can probably learn a few things from the Derek Bells of this world. But that's certainly not one that should be missed if you are in the area on Thursday.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast.
As I said just now, the test days are always busy, and whilst I was there, I spoke to a couple of old friends of ours. Now, talk about the Goodwood revival, and there's one name which runs through almost all of the history of the revival, and that's the Jordan Racing Team, and I'm here with Mike Jordan. Thank you for sparing the time on this busy test day to talk to me. You've got a lot of cars involved in revival this year.
We're very lucky. We haven't got too many here today. We've got 4 here today, which is a nice number to be testing on. That's good. You can really get your teeth into it. And some of the cars are cars that we've run extensively before, and some, like the Aston Martin, that's the first time it's run out as a race car from us. Obviously it was a period race car in the 1960s, and the Chilton family bought it and said they wanted it put in back as a race car, so that's been a huge project for us, and it's brilliant to see it out here running.
Isn't it? And in that Aston Green, which of course is exactly the right colour for it, and that is a very, very special car, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes, and I've got to say it's the first Aston Martin we've ever built or been involved in, so it's been a big learning curve for us along the way. There's obviously a lot of Aston specialists out there. Horace Williams have built cars that have done well here, so we've been spending copious amounts of money with them along the way. They've done the engine on this car for us as well, so it'd be interesting. There's been some rule modifications for Stirling Moss Trophy for this year to try and equalise some of the categories there across an Aston, Ferrari, an E-Type, and a Ferrari. And they felt that some of the cars wanted slowing down a little bit, and so this will be a really interesting one, because I know that we've got 2 completely compliant cars from different ends of the spectrum there, with a Cobra and an Aston. I've got Andrew driving them both today, and it's very interesting seeing the time comparisons in them. So it'll be fascinating to see how the other cars compete at the event. I think the Cobra that we've got here that he shares with Matt Holm will be super competitive. I'm very, very hopeful for a result in that. Max Chilton's coming to drive the Aston for the first time tomorrow. They've not seen that car for about a year, since it was first delivered to me as a road car.
Wow.
No, it'll be interesting, but it's gone out this morning. I mean, the value of that car is off the scale. So Andrew and I were both a little bit nervous about him being asked to do all the test running today. And we're really, really relieved and pleased with that. It's gone well straight out the box. The handling balance is great. No, exciting times.
And yeah, you said that it's very much a rebuild from what was a road car, effectively, although originally it was a racer. And just how much work do you have to do that? That's not, some of the cars that race here are sort of replicas of the original race car, and that one absolutely isn't. That is, and Mr. Chilton was very set that he didn't. I think some people could easily have gone, well, I've bought the original car, I'll just build a replica one and race that, and he absolutely didn't want to do that. So that is absolutely the original car. In the day, it never raced with a roll cage in it, so we had to sort of try and tastefully fit a roll cage to it, not as comprehensive as some of the cages we'd fit to some of our slightly more modern cars. So you had to sort of give it a period nod, and a lot of the stuff I wanted to keep it looking very, very original, whilst trying to get it down to its minimum weight, which is a bit of a task with the Aston, because it's not a particularly light car, although it's called a lightweight. So we've got it virtually there, and really a lot of the other stuff is just your normal race preparation stuff that we'd expect to do to anything. So we put new wiring loom in the car, because you've got a very old loom there that you can't risk having any failures on. So some of that sort of stuff is purely for doing your reliability and your safety. And here we are on the third test day, and you've got the Aston, you've got the lovely Chevrolet there with the with the yellow, orange and red stripes down the side, and the Cobra, and an Alpha.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the Chevrolet Corvette, when Matt Holm first said to us about 4 years ago, I fancy a car for the TT and I want a Corvette. And we did sit him down and say, right, you realise you will never win. You will never, ever win, because that's one of those you cannot possibly make it fast enough to win the TT. And he was just, I don't really give a damn, because I think it's the coolest car out there. So we did it. It was, again, that was a period race car from the States. So it had nice history, and I still think it's a super cool looking car, cool sounding car. If you can get a top 10, you know you've had a really good day in that car.
Yeah. And it sounds unbelievably good.
It sounds unbelievably good, yeah.
And we can break the news that we're actually going to see Mike Jordan behind the wheel again at Revival this year.
Yeah. Fortunately, we got a bit of a late invite for our A40, and we thought we were sort of pretty well fixed with all the cars that we were bringing along. We'd got these four here today. We'd got Dragon Snake, which we've had some great results in that with Andrew, with Mike Whittaker, and with Tom Hartley Jr. But he's driving the White Cobra here with Matt, and I believe that we got Tony Kanaan in with Tom Jr. in the purple one. John Tordoff's got an invite for his Elan for the Ford Water Trophy, which he's delighted about, because John loves the weekend here, and we thought that was about it. And then a couple of weeks ago we just suddenly got an invite through for our A40, which was quite late, so I don't know if somebody couldn't turn up to the party, but hey ho, yeah, you get the invite. So just when I didn't need any extra work, I got some, because that little car had been put away last year and sat in the corner, and now it needs a bit of work to get it ready and get it running on the sustainable fuels, because we've never run it on that before. But if you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago when we were trying to finish the Aston, I was sort of, I'm not sure that we can do that. Maybe we just need to say thanks ever so much for the invite, but we'll skip this one. But you don't get many invites, and as you get a bit older, you definitely get less invites. So I'm very much no. We'll get that out. I seriously, and this would be a first for Andrew and I don't think we'll get to test it here at all. I think I'll get it. I'll get it sorted on its fuel, do all the prep on it, and I'll give it up a run up and down the road outside the workshop to Lichfield and back, and that'll be our testing. We'll just come and get on with it.
But let's face it, both you and Andrew and the car know your way around Goodwood pretty well.
We do indeed. I mean, Andrew does obviously a hell of a lot of laps around here. I've not done anywhere near as much driving this year as I have in the past, so I'll probably be the rusty part of the whole equation, but just get your head down and get on with it.
I know you will, and you've got another test day tomorrow, Thursday. Yeah,
and to be honest, we were looking that we were going to be running all four cars tomorrow, but Matt's super happy with the Cobra where that's at, so I think he's going to do. Andrew's said he's done with the Cobra, so he doesn't need any more time in that. There's nothing else to try. I think Matt's going to do one more session, and I think he's going to do one more session in the Corvette. So I don't think he's going to run tomorrow. It's quite difficult, Paul, that you ideally you want to do a lot of your pre-season revival testing at the start of the year, because you get to this time of the year and you make one mistake and you back something in the wall, and it makes it a whole world of pain for the team and the body shop and everything to try and get it back out. And we had that last year, that we had a car badly damaged 2 weeks prior, and it was such an ask, and we got it here. So you have to try and be a little bit sensitive at this close to the event, and Goodwood this morning is poured with rain early on, so all the grass is wet. You know, you're one mistake away from it being a great day, or oh God, how are we going to get that car finished for the revival? So
we'll certainly catch up with you hopefully tomorrow, and if you're here next week, then we'll do that again. But I am delighted that you're going to be out there. I really am, Mike. That it's great news, and that we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Mike Whittaker was the man who stood on the top of the podium for the TT Celebration race last year in his much loved TVR BFR 400B, and Mike joins me now at the test day. It's going to be a tough one to come back to, isn't it?
Well, they say the first one's the hardest, so So we'll see. The car's performing as well as it has. We're here doing some testing. We're sharing with Tom Christensen this year. So we'll see. But everybody who competes in this, knows you need good car, good drivers, good luck. There's quite a few things that all add up to a TT win. So we'll see.
Now you say those four factors that you need. They all came together last year, didn't they?
They did. I struggled a little bit with the car at the beginning in the wet, like you do with any TVR in the wet. We had a little bit of bad luck following, like basically a back marker into the pits that cost us some time. So I think I was entering the pits 6th, and we came out like 9th. And then, we had a safety car. Which halved our gap to the front, and Tom Ingram, drove like a hero. Yeah. Obviously I have the in-car of the whole race, and I've watched it a good few times, and he's got steering angle on in 4th gear corners that I wouldn't have on in 2nd gear corners. But yeah, it all came together.
Yeah.
Just in time. Yeah.
It was close, wasn't it?
It was really close. And of course it was brilliant because Tom and Jake were battling it out for the touring cars. The Bryant's family, Cobra, and Mike Whittaker's TVR Griffith both raced each other here in 1965. It was... you'd think Sylvester Stallone has written the movie or something, how it all came together.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that those cars were here in 1965. We do see, and you have to say, some of the cars maybe aren't as original as they might be out there. This is really important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The great thing with this car is it was really well covered in period. There's a 2-page John Bolster article in 1965 in the Autosport that covers the car in detail. Photos of under the bonnet with the 3 Holly carbs, the wire wheels on it, and that's that's true to how we built it. That's how you can see it. And a lot of people talk about cars, how quick they are now versus 10 years ago. But I think I've been racing these nearly 20 years, and the horsepower is probably 70 more. So there's been a lot found by sort of great engine builders, and I have a great engine builder.
So it's obviously the car is very well sorted. That you've done a huge amount of work on it over the years, and you've had some brilliant drivers in it as well. Tom Christensen, TK, he's famous for being a safe pair of hands, but he can also be a tiger as well.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. He shared with my son Michael in the Rover SD1 at the members meeting, and he's obviously, you don't win as many Le Mans as he has without really knowing how to race. And it was like the pros went out first, then the owners, and I think in the pro race, ironically, he ended up literally on the back bumper of Tom Ingram's Camaro with 2 laps to go. And when he sort of came in, he just said to my son, I could have put a move on him, but it would cost both of us time, and it was like an aggregate weekend. The guy thinking so much when he's out there, and they came second overall in that car amongst all those 5 whatever litre machines in the little SD1. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I think he's going to do the classic TK, and the first time he's going to sit in it is qualifying Friday. But he's got he calls himself Tom's slave, but Tom's manager Jan, he's been in touch. The people in Goodwood, approached me and said, we'd like you to be with Tom this year, but another Tom, which should be fantastic.
And with a car like that, clearly you can go out and I want to say hooliganise it, but that Tom last year hooliganised it and pushed it very hard. And after all these years, I don't want to jinx anything, Mike, but it's pretty bulletproof, isn't it?
It runs reasonably well. They all do. From the years I've been watching and competing here, the TT has turned from like a 1 hour endurance into a 1 hour sprint. I don't know if you heard, but we took the TT winner out for a test run earlier this year. First time it had turned a wheel since the revival, and it did 1.5 laps. And we had an engine issue, so we were 4 minutes or 3 minutes from a problem last year. I mean, literally, that's how near. That's just how near some of this stuff is. So we're just gonna have to see on the day, really.
And I think that probably most of our listeners can't wait for the day because it's going to be a good one. But Mike Whittaker, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thanks.
There are lots of ways to keep up with historic racing news. Our podcast comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsport's history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page. With over 1 million views a month, it is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
Now back to the Historic Racing News podcast and Paul Tarsey.
Jim, we had the sad news very, very recently that we lost not only one of the names of motorsport in the US, but one of the voices of motorsport in the US.
That's a great way to put it, Paul. H.A. Humpy Wheeler was a NASCAR legend. He came along at just the right time to help push the sport from its toddler stage, I'll say, to adulthood, and it became a national force. He passed away at the age of 86. He was a native of Belmont, North Carolina. He was president of Charlotte Motor Speedway. There are many people that misnomer that Humpy was the owner. No, he was the president of Charlotte Motor Speedway for 33 years. In addition, he served as president of SMI, which when racetracks started to go public and became corporations, that was Bruton Smith's company, SMI, the group that owned and operated. They had 8 NASCAR-sanctioned venues, and Humpy oversaw that entire operation. He was an innovator. He was a free thinker. He got most of his attention for his pre-race spectaculars that ranged from school bus jumps over old junk cars to the Robosaurus, which was a towering, fire-breathing, car-crunching mechanical robot.
Sorry, I'm Googling that the second this ends. Robosaurus, yes? Yeah, okay.
You should.
Sounds
and of
like
course,
something from
because
The
it was the 600, the Charlotte 600, World 600 under for its early name, Coca-Cola 600 more recently, was on Memorial Day. He often had military operations as part of the pre-race ceremony, and his most famous was his recreation of the U.S. invasion of Grenada. So that was a big deal and grabbed a lot of headlines. Under Wheeler's guidance, Charlotte Motor Speedway was the first track to build condominiums on site. So it was a place where you could buy a condominium, live there, use it for entertainment. Also, they pioneered a lot of the suite things. They had a first to offer a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant that overlooked the speedway. And it was the first major NASCAR track to install lights and run races under the lights. And that all came about because Charlotte Motor Speedway hosted NASCAR's All-Star Race, then known as the Winston. And there were a lot of talk that Winston was going to take it someplace else. And Humpy said, what if we could run it under the lights? And everybody at the table looked like, how the heck are we going to do that? And in the space of about 3 months, they literally brought in Musco, a lighting company, and lit the 1.5-mile speedway. And that paved the way for many of even Daytona now. It has permanent lighting that was installed by Musco. And it really has changed the way the sport has run. Everybody always says, well, where does the Humpy nickname come from? Well, his dad was H.A. Wheeler Sr. He was the athletic director and football coach at nearby Belmont Abbey College. And he picked up the Humpy nickname from his football teammates at the University of Illinois after he was caught smoking Camel cigarettes. And, of course, his son eventually inherited that nickname. Humpy was a football player at the University of South Carolina, but he was probably, and interestingly, with former NASCAR executive, the late Jim Hunter, Wheeler's football career ended when he broke his back in his junior year. He was also an accomplished boxer, and he was probably more famous for that than he was his football exploits, because he was 40-2. He won the Golden Gloves light heavyweight title, and dreamed of making the U.S. Olympic team in 1960. And his love for the sport carried over. He used to promote boxing events. They would build a huge stage and put the ring up on top of the stage so that people in the grandstands, the stage was actually just a little bit higher than the starter stand at the speedway. It would be over top of the starter stand, so fans could sit in the grandstands and watch the fights. He promoted some local races early in his career, but he really, his motorsports career took off when he joined Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, and he was the group's liaison for stock car racing. And he said, he always used to say that was where he got his real racing education. Bruton Smith, as I said, he was a local car dealer and track promoter. He brought Humpy in 1975 to oversee the speedway, and that's where his career took off. Throughout his career, he served as a mentor and advisor to multiple people, drivers, and people were always coming to talk to him. He even gave me advice on more than one occasion. If I had a question about where television was going, or what I might, how I might make things better, or what he thought of a show, he was always there to answer the questions. He was very, very accessible, even though he really was a motorsports big shot. And he was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2006, Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2009. He's also in the Carolina Boxing Hall of Fame. He left Charlotte Motor Speedway in 2008. And this little known fact, he was the voice of Tex, the 1975 Cadillac Coupe de Ville character in the 2006 cartoon classic Cars, and then again in Cars 3. So he was awarded this year the Landmark Award for outstanding contributions to NASCAR at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So he is going to be remembered for a remarkable life and legacy, and he really was a man who changed the face of the sport. There are many who believe he was one of the people who was the quiet gray eminence behind the Indianapolis Motor Speedway doing its first NASCAR race, the original Brickyard 400, and even in some ways giving, and doing that gave the folks at the Speedway the impetus to start the IRL, Tony George. And so Humpy had a vast effect on in a positive way on many people. I think my favorite Humpy quote was, he used to talk, Richard Petty used to always drive the high line at Charlotte. And Richard used to joke that, well, if you're up there near the wall, if you hit the wall, you don't have as far to travel, so you don't hit it as hard. And Humpy used to say that Richard Petty was in the gray where the angels feared to tread. And I always thought that was up in the gray stuff where the angels fear to tread. That
lovely.
That's lovely.
Line that Humpy coined.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for those lovely words about Humpy Wheeler, who we lost recently. Paul, you've been going here, there, and everywhere lately, but you had a tremendous time at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, I know, and you spoke to quite a lot of important people, besides me, that is. But you spoke to all sorts of important people over the course of that weekend.
I did. I was very fortunate, to be quite honest. I slightly feel that I actually stole your gig because you've done this in the past. But I was asked by Goodwood if I could help out, and I was fully expecting to be, if you like, the runt of the litter, never having done it before. So I was going to get, no big names or anything to interview. And I didn't actually find out till the Tuesday of Festival of Speed week, when I got an email with some names on it, that who I would be interviewing. And the email arrived and I looked at it and I went, hell's bells. Because I wasn't, if I was the runt of the litter, I don't know what everyone else was getting. And then I had to actually message them back and say, it says Andretti, is that Mario? And they came back and said, yes, it was Mario. So quite, taken aback by that. So I had a whole day to prepare for 4 days of interviews, basically. But was phenomenally lucky. On the Thursday, this is slightly off topic, but I interviewed the Red Arrows twice in 2 different locations, and they were really, really good fun. And it was a fantastic just to get an insight of how they operate, what they do, etc., etc. But then it was in at the deep end. And on the Friday, I started off nice and easily with actually Jake Hill, who's a lovely guy from Touring Cars. I hadn't met Jake before, but nice interviewee. And then in the afternoon, it was Mario. And if you've seen the pictures, I think that we put up on the website, etc., etc., I was instantly taken aback because I'm 6'2", and Mario comes up to somewhere between my elbow and my shoulder. And we'd given him rather a tall bar stool to sit on. And there was a moment when I thought, he's 85. Do I help him onto the bar stool? Is that, what is the protocol here? But he did get himself on that. And
Paul, I was so relieved that you didn't rest a beer on his head.
you see,
I was so relieved.
It literally is.
So relieved.
He must be a single-seater designer's dream, because I had not realised how tiny Mario Andretti actually was.
And tough as nails.
He was. And he was. And I know he's probably done what we did so many times before, but he was an absolute delight. And it's worth remembering with these interviews that, in fact, I'm interviewing in front of quite a large audience. I never ever counted. I tried quickly to during Nigel Mansell, I think I got to about 100, but I was probably less than halfway around everyone that I was trying to cancel. So you're trying to do a different sort of interview to if we were one-to-one when it was someone where you can get quite in-depth. You're having to entertain this crowd as well and make sure that they tell the stories that they want to hear. But it was just really, really good fun. Mario, absolute star. On the Saturday, I was somewhat out my comfort zone and had Carl Fogarty, the 4 times world superbike champion, with 4 times with Ducati back in the 1990s, and he was a revelation. What a lovely guy, so supremely honest. And I asked him the question, because he stopped mid-season in 99, I think it was, with a shoulder injury, couldn't race anymore, was online for his 3rd championship. So, how did it feel when it all stopped? And he literally paused for about 5 seconds and just said, I was relieved, the pressure was off. And he was so honest, and it was a delight to interview him. And then on the Sunday, of course, as we are going to find out, it was Nigel Mansell, who was on fine form, playing up to the crowd and loving every minute of it.
Nigel, let's just talk a little bit about your career, because, we suddenly discovered we do have a very wobbly table. But we picked you Formula One, getting to Formula One and going through those small Formula. That was a battle for you as much as anything you ever had in Formula One, wasn't it? Am I right, at one point you sold your house?
It was so easy. It was no problem at all.
There goes 3 days of research.
Well, short, long story. We bought an old Formula Ford back in 1976. I think it was £1,500, and I sold my guns and I sold my golf clubs, and didn't quite sell the car. That was and the house was 2 years later, and we managed to do 6 races. That's all we could do, and I won 6, had 2 crashes, and I think it was about 4th. And then the next year we managed to get a free car off Crosley. Thank you, Crosley, still after all these years. Minister Engines got free engines, because why did I get a free car? Why did I get free engine? But I couldn't afford to buy them. And we won something like 32 or 33 races in that year. and won the championship, which was quite interesting. And I did the whole season. I think it's only about £2,500 the whole season, because you won prize money and went straight back into the car. And I did all the engineering myself. Between the races, I used to take the head of the engine off and reseat the valves just to get a little bit more power. And it was great. But fast forwarding it to Formula 3, that's when it all went wrong. Because when you're a champion in one formula, you go up to the next formula, and they wanted quite a lot of money. We didn't have any. And then I was conned, basically. I won't even say the company that conned me. They said, look, if you give us this amount of money, we'll get the sponsors and you can do the whole season. So we sold the house and gave them all the money and sold all the silver. And within, I think it was in about 4 or 5 races, they fired me and said I was absolutely useless, so thank you very much. And so we sat out then. It was very difficult. Then I got an engineering job with Lotus, with Colin Chapman.
I was going to say, with Colin Chapman, obviously a great factor in your career, because Colin gave you a Formula 1 test, but then you had a big crash just 2 days before it at Alton Park.
That was quite interesting. Yeah, at Alton Park, I was with Unipart in 1979, and bless him, he's not with us anymore. Andre Cesaris came down the inside, flipped me at about 165 miles an hour, and I somersaulted in a Formula 3 car, landing upside down. And that was my first proper broken back. So my back was broken, and I was lying in bed on a board, as you did back then. And then I had a phone call 2.5 weeks after the accident, and I was lying in bed, and it was the late, great Colin Chapman saying, I'm doing a test down at Paul Ricard with 5 or 6 different drivers, Stephen South, Jan Lammers, Elliot Angelis, Eddie Sheaver, and someone else. And would I like to come down to be the last driver, just have a few laps in a Formula 1 car? I said, oh, fantastic. And then he said, I understand you were in quite a big accident a few weeks ago. You're right. I said, yeah, I'm fine, sir. Really good. So then put the phone down, phoned my specialist up, Alistair Thompson. I still remember his name. I said, right, I don't want any whatnot. I said, the most powerful painkillers. And you said to me you could get a steel corset. I said, I need it because I'm going down to Paul Ricard to drive a Formula 1 car next week. So that was interesting.
Colin Chapman obviously had faith in you, then put you in the car for the full season. What do you remember of working with Colin Chapman?
He didn't really have too much faith at that point, because I got in the car at the end of the day, the first time I'd ever driven a Formula 1 car at Paul Ricard. And I was following Gilles Villeneuve in the red Ferrari going down they used to have a mile-long straight there. And when you're flat out, you can stay with him. It was really good. Then we came to the first corner, and I stayed with him. And it came around the horseshoe, and I stayed with him again. And then there was a sequence of chicanes. He went that way on the track, and I went that way over there, and almost smashed myself up and the car. Came in. I was really proud of myself. I said, what was my best lap? 6 seconds a lap slower. And I went back to the hotel that night after that test thinking, I'm out of my depth. It's really, really bad. Long story short, I came in the morning, and I was the first one in the car in the morning. They changed the gearbox, changed the cogs, because I was holding the gears in because they smashed all the corners off the gearbox. And they gave me a new set of tyres, and I was green as to what new set of tyres were worth then. Anyway, on the second lap, I was going down the straight at over 200 miles an hour, and everything's rushing past. You can't see the trees, you can't see the people watching. But then the second lap, everything slowed down in slow motion. I could see everything. From one lap to the next, I'll give you a guess. How much quicker was I from one lap to the next? 6 seconds. I couldn't believe it. And then from that moment on, then he had a lot of faith in me.
In any form of motor racing, 6 seconds is a lifetime. You worked your way up, you did Formula 3. What was it like sitting on that first Formula 1 grid with people that you'd obviously been reading about and watching for years all around you? And you were sat
first race?
Yes.
I was very hot. I was getting fourth degree burns on the bum.
Because of the fuel leak?
Because the fuel was leaking in the car. And they said, you better get out of the car. I said, it's my first race, I'm not getting out of the car. And if you look at YouTube, you'll see someone with a watering can or a bucket of water pour a bucket of water in the car to try and dilute it and cool me down. Because that was my first experience of a Formula 1 race, getting a bucket of water on the start, so my backside wasn't burnt. And the moral of the story, 2 o'clock in the morning that evening, I was in hospital. The technical term is having all the blisters de-roofed off the... And I couldn't sit down for over 3 weeks after that.
That's quite an introduction to Formula 1.
It was terrible, and the worst thing was, because I was 44 laps before the engine blew, and then I said, oh, thank you, engine blowing up. The hamstring shrunk And even to this day, my legs are still very stiff because if you sit in chemicals which are burning you and tightening your legs like this, they never recovered properly.
Even to this day?
Yeah, even to this day. Yeah.
Obviously, with Lotus, I appreciate we're going to be rattling through your career. How did the move from Lotus to Williams, Frank Williams? What was the first contact there?
Very quick, short story. Colin Chapman was like a godfather and a father to me. He was the most amazing man. He didn't pay me anything to start with, but he gave me the drive, which was magnificent. And when we got to Monaco, I was on the third on the grid, and he was over the moon, qualifying as number one driver. And he said to me, "Why aren't you happy?" And I said, "Oh, I'm happy. I really am happy." And I do tell the truth, and that's the problem. But anyway, he said, "Look, no, you're not happy. Why are you not happy?" I said, "Well, it'd be nice if my wife would be with me, Roseanne, keep me company." "Well, why isn't she here?" "No, it's fine. She's having to work, so." "Well, why is she working?" I said, "Oh, this terrible truth thing's terrible." I said, "Because you don't pay me enough. I can't afford to drive for you because I'm paying my airfares, I'm paying my hotels, and my salary was $25,000 the first year in Formula One. So my wife was supporting me. Incidentally, she took me to Alaska a few weeks ago. It's our 50th wedding anniversary, and we've been together 55 years. And she said, "I'm taking you there, but if you don't behave yourself, you're not coming back." So, so bless her, she was supporting me. And then Colin said, he looked at me like this, "Okay, I'm doubling your salary." And then he doubled my salary that weekend because he was really pleased. And then Roseanne wasn't earning as much as $25,000. And so she managed to come to about half the races then. Couldn't afford to come to all of them because it was a greater expense. But, no complaints because it was fantastic. I was in Formula One and it was marvellous. But fast forwarding it, then the second year, Colin started over 3 years because he gave me a 5-year contract. Made me basically, I was going to be a millionaire within a couple of years. Then the unthinkable happens, and obviously very prematurely he died. So then, without saying anything, the new person that came on, which I won't mention his name, then wouldn't honour my contract the next year and cut my salary in half again, and then fired me the next year. So there I was on the open market at the end of, I think it was 83 or 84, and we ended up being at Williams.
With Williams, very, very quickly up to pace with Williams. 85, that first win at Brands Hatch, European Grand Prix. You think of yourself as a Formula One driver. Suddenly you're a Formula One winner. Did that alter how you felt about things?
I think the incredible thing is you get these labels. You haven't won a race in 76 races. And the reason you haven't won a race in 76 races, all my teammates have been world champions. Keke Rosberg was my first. Elliot Andrews, unfortunately, was my first one, but then he died. I won't go there because it's so sad. And then Keke, and then Nelson Piquet, Alan Prost, and then Mario Andretti. And Mario Andretti I replaced at Lotus when Colin gave me the drive. That's why Mario likes me so much. But it was a wonderful experience, and all I can say is that when you're driving a car at Brands Hatch with upwards of 1,500 horsepower qualifying, and it's a great circuit, and it's you've got to have all the ladies and children here, so I'm thinking the correct words. You've got to be super intelligent and brave, and I had a lobotomy at 20, so there's intelligence gone out the window, and probably got a bit too much of the other part. So, but it was a great race, and I was really hoping, praying that nothing was going to break down, because when you're a number 2 driver back then, you had 30-40% more chance of breaking down than a number 1 driver.
Yeah, those were the days.
They were very unreliable, and today now the Formula 1 cars are just magical.
That first win was in 85, and then suddenly in 86, you're in the title battle. You went into the last round of 86.
That's very kind of you to mention this. Yeah.
It has to be done because it makes what comes next look so good.
Are any French people in here? Hands up, please. Because that little bugger yesterday, when we were asked a question for Sky or whatever, because I was terribly unhappy, said which was his best win and his best race and his best world championship. And what did he say? Oh, when Nigel's tyre blew up and I won in Australia. I mean, I'm going to be very rude. What a little shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst memory in my life, for several reasons. I lost the championship twice that year, one on the racetrack, and then when I was at prize giving and the FIA and they said, I've got to come, I said, I'm not coming. I came second. You only have the champions there. you come, we put a special prize on for you. I don't want a special prize. Well, if you don't come, I'll fine you $250,000. Okay, I'll be there. So I go there, and I sit next to Bertie Martin, who's the clerk of the course, and he said, Nigel, we're so sorry what happened to you in Australia. You should have been world champion. I said, oh, that's very kind of you. He said, well, you know what happened if you'd have crashed the car? I said, yeah, broken legs, feet, arm, might have killed myself, what the hell? He said, no, he said it would have been a big shunt. He said, we would have stopped the race. He said, because it's gone over 2/3 distance, we would have red flagged it, and you would have been crowned champion.
So
the moral of the story is read a rule book at 200 miles an hour when your tyre explodes, and you'll win the world championship.
And also, don't be such a good driver that you controlled a car at high speed with a real blowout. They zigzagged for hundreds of yards down and put it up a safety road out the way. So
I'd have taken a broken leg. I've got 2 broken feet anyway.
We're going to have a fly through. I just wanted a quick... Ferrari. You went to Ferrari. You won your very first race at Ferrari.
That was brilliant. Yeah, no, it was brilliant. I mean, you know, you have this expectation when you go to a new team. Ferrari is a magical place to go. And when I first went there, I was being shown around the factory, and there was Valentino Rossi's bike was in the corner, one like it. I thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's all I did, carried on walking. 2 weeks later, a new bike came to my home in the Isle of Man for free. Always lovely. Anyway, we win the first race, but I've got to tell you, the warm-up before the race, I only did 4 corners. The car kept breaking down. So I saw the British Airways captain the day before. I said, will you put me on the earlier flight, please? Because I'm only going to do 10 laps. And so we get in the race, and I was in 3rd place, and I was getting angry because I'm going, well, break down then. You're going to break down. It's already past Gerhard Berger's car broken down. And then I get up to 2nd, and I'm going, oh, this is so upsetting. You know, when he breaks down now, I'm in 2nd place. Then I got in 1st place, and I got really angry. Until halfway through the race, the steering wheel came off in my hand going down the straight. I'm in the lead, and the steering wheel all comes loose. All the bolts came out the steering wheel. So I made an emergency pit stop for 5 wheels, 4 tyres, and the steering wheel. And the chief mechanic's got a hole in his palm of his hand because he smashed it on. And because I wasn't very good at holding a button because they're jiggling around like this, I always put a long toggle switch on mine. So that pierced his palm, and so it was great. So he got a memento for winning the race too.
As I said, flying.
And then I got to say, all the church bells ring around Italy, and obviously the Pope visits Ferrari. The Ferrari don't have to go and visit the Pope. I didn't finish a race for 7 races then.
But you had that win. I'm going to flash forward here. Let's go to 1992. That car, the F14WB, is here today. I think you've actually been up the hill in the FW14B. That season, you were front page Mansell Mania. I was at Silverstone in 92. I was in the Stowe Grandstand. Every single lap you got up, you went round. Everyone stood up and cheered, and it was like that How aware were you of the support you actually had in that year?
It's incredible, really, and I had a bit of PTSD yesterday because, you know, back in 91 when we raced in Australia, the last race is always important to have a good race because you carry it through the winter. And I knew my contract was going to be up in 92, and what people don't realise was Prost was trying to get me sacked out of the 92 contract so he could have the drive then. And so it wasn't really harmonious, but we raced in a Typhoon. Do you remember that race in 91 in Australia in a Typhoon? There's cars all over the track, and Ed and I were going head down the straight with bits of cars all over the place. And I called my engineer on the radio. I said, is it clear to overtake? I couldn't see a damn thing. And anyway, I had an accident, fast forwarding it, 165, straight into the concrete wall, because the concrete walls were just here. And it's seen, since the film footage has come out, my car did an aquaplane, something fell off the car that we were lapping, came under the front of mine, and then I lost the steering, and it went straight into the wall. As I hit the wall, my left foot exploded, because concrete and a little foot at 165 miles an hour don't go together. So my 3 toes on the left foot, they basically dislocated, broke, smashed, and jumped up on top of where the toe should be. And I went, goodness gracious me, I did. But allegedly I passed out. The pain was excruciating. I just sat there in the car. Obviously I was stunned, and I woke up. And then the next thing I remember was Sid Watkins, the medical doctor, coming and saying to me, Nigel, you okay? You're okay? And I knew my foot was smashed, and I said, yeah, I'm great, Sid. Well, why haven't you come out of the car? I said, have you seen the weather out there, Sid? It's much better in here than out there. Because I didn't want him to know that I was in serious trouble. Because then you have to go through medicals to get things back again. So I flew back to America that night, and I'm getting to the story, but you'll appreciate it in a minute. And I went straight into hospital, and they were getting me ready to operate on me straight away. And I said, hang on, whoa, what are you going to do? You've got splintered bones in your foot. We've got to get them out and chisel them and do all that thing. How long's the recovery? 3 months. I said, I can't do it. 3 months, I can't do it. I can't waste 3 months. And I got a very good orthopedic doctor, George Morris III, who's unfortunately passed. And they wouldn't let me out of hospital because of all the insurance problems. So I had to go through a whole load of things and sign off on everything that I was leaving hospital. And I drove the whole year in 1992 with a broken left foot. And what I did, I put carbon fibre in. I had one pair of boots I could wear and carbon fibre on the first 2 toes here and carbon fibre on the other so I didn't bend. And then occasionally through the year, I'd just pick bones out the side of the foot. Because I knew if I didn't win the championship in 92, and this is what I'm getting to, I'd have no chance at all. So I was a man possessed at the end of 91, 92 because of my foot. I trained, I lost 12 to 16 pounds, which Riccardo Patrese never forgave me because I was so much lighter and stronger. And the mental strength of driving a car with a broken foot all of 92 blew everyone's mind except they didn't know it. And the press didn't know what the hell was going on. I never told them.
Story of being in the press, I'm afraid. But just to put that 92 in context, you were champion after 12 races. Of the 16 races, you had it sealed up in Hungary, I think.
I was getting tired and I needed an operation. I needed to get doing it.
So it was winning quickly.
I mean, if you remember when I went to prize giving in 92, I was on crutches for months. Because I did more damage to my foot during the year, as you can imagine.
But you had that championship. And then the very next year, it wasn't Formula One, it was IndyCar. And again, you won your very first race.
Yeah, no, they did everything they could to stop me. I mean, I got pole position, which no one's ever done as a rookie, and as a world champion, they make you put learner stripes on the back of the car. You're a learner. I'm a world champion. Don't care. You're a learner. So I got pole position. So then I was winning the race pretty good and overtook Emerson Fittipaldi. They said I deemed an infraction, and they made me do a stop-go penalty in the pits and put me 30 seconds behind. And then I saw the red mist, fortunately, in the car, so I called him and passed him again and still won the race. So it was pretty neat. No one's ever done that.
It's pretty unique, to be quite honest, that first win at Surfers Paradise. But then, of course, on the schedule, Indianapolis 500, that unique circuit, you're only turning left, you're going incredibly quick.
Oh,
you came so close to winning that.
You're bringing up all these awful things.
It's my job.
Well, what can I say? We messed up on the second race at Phoenix. And I went into the wall backwards at 220 miles an hour. And I went to sleep for some time. And I had I had about 148 stitches down the spine and a few other things I won't go into because of the children. And they didn't know how to put me back together. And the reason they didn't know how to put me back together is no auto accident in America had survived the accident that I did at Phoenix. You've got to explain to them that I knocked a 3-foot hole in a concrete wall about 4 or 5 feet
with
thick.
your gearbox, if I remember.
The percussion and the shockwave that came through the car messed my back up a little bit. And so what happened then, I had to drive with these problems, which I won't go into because they're pretty ugly. And then Indy came, and they decided, because I had 3 foot of tubes in my back to vacuum all the things out, which I won't go into. And they said, we've got to repair it. So I went under the knife 3 weeks before qualifying, or 2 weeks before qualifying. I had 148 stitches in the back, and then I was pulling 5G 2 weeks later qualifying, ripping all the stitches out. And I was on a bit of morphine and a bit of other things. In America, they do things like that. It's really good. But what you don't realize, we go into the race, and I'm winning the race with only a few laps to go. There's no oil on the circuit, there's no accident on the circuit, and they throw a full course yellow. Because Lynn St. James, the lady driver, drives in the pits and goes to the wrong pit. Well, that doesn't matter, they don't have to put a full course yellow. So I got jumped on the start and came third instead of winning, but I was 5 seconds in the lead and they wouldn't have caught me. So, and then on the last but one lap, I hit the wall out of turn 2, didn't I?
So near.
But I carried on.
But you won that championship at the end of the year. There was a brief time, because the two seasons were different, you were actually Formula One champion and IndyCar champion at the same time.
Yeah, simultaneously, first person in the history of the world to hold both titles at the same time. But I'd prefer to have defended my Formula One championship in England, but that wasn't meant to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, almost at everything we want to say. We do have a few... Has anyone got a question for Nigel Mansell? If you put up a hand, we do have our radio mic. I've lost track of Rosie, who's got the radio mic. Who's right behind? Oh, sorry, it's not Rosie. I do apologise. The gentleman in the red hat, I think it was. Yeah, I'm being told we are tight for time. This will be the question. No pressure, huh?
While they're going there, Nigel, why don't you go for the Red Arrows? You've done 5G, you can be up there with the boys.
I know, they do 8, 9G, they do.
Yeah, sorry, have the check.
Sorry, which
Very close with the mic, touching it, yeah?
Yeah. Which type of car did you find more satisfying to drive, the turbo cars or the normally aspirated ones?
What sort of cars were more satisfying to drive?
Sorry, which type of car did you find more satisfying to drive, turbo cars or normally aspirated?
The one I went in. No. People, it's a great question, and I'll answer it in a different way. People say, which is your best circuit or the circuit you like? Well, the one that you win. Do you know, the beast of the car in Formula One, which will never be seen ever again, was in the early, mid-80s when I joined Keke Rosberg at Williams. And you've got to understand that, you went from 0 horsepower to 700 to 800 horsepower in a split second. Or when you put your foot down like that, you count 1, 2, then you get 800 horsepower. And then we got up to 1,500 horsepower with it. And Martin Brundle, who does a great job commentating, he said to me ages ago, he said, Nigel, he said, we were mad. He said, these cars wanted to kill you on every corner. They tried to kill the driver on every corner because initially you had to guess when the power was coming in. And just to let you know how bad that was, I thought I was going to get sacked from Williams the first 3 or 4 races because I didn't have a good start with them. And it was Estoril and it was raining, we were going to the grid. And I called for the power going into the corner, but I was like 200 yards before the corner and nothing happened. So I'm starting to go in the corner in the apex, and then an 800 horsepower came. And I wasn't ready for it. And of course, it just spins you off, and I flipped the front wheel, broke the suspension, came in the pit lane. And it's worthy of telling you this because I came in the pit lane, Patrick Head went berserk on the rev limiter. He did better than Riccardo Patrese. And they repaired the car, and I just sat there quietly. And in the race, the same thing happened to Keke Rosberg on the big right-hander before the main straight. Keke, this is a world champion, they listened to him. And I said, Keke, thank you so much for having that accident. It vindicated mine.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thought Nigel is a bit rushed. We do have somewhere else for him to be. But please give a big hand. It's the 1992 Formula One World Champion, 1993 Cup Champion. It's Mr. Nigel Mansell.
Can I just say most sincerely to all of you, because I've been blessed, and you know this only too true. A lot of you have been to the British Grand Prix. A lot of you support all the British drivers. Thank you for all the support over the years. You've been absolutely brilliant. And God bless all of you, and safe drive home.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast.
I told you that the show had a lot in it, and I wasn't telling you any fibs, was I? Next month,
seams are bursting, aren't they?
I think that the seams are well and
my
truly
seams have been
burst.
bursting for a while, but
why are you looking at me when you say that? Now, next month we'll report on the Share Hill climb, which, as you know, is one of our favourites, and also, of course, the Goodwood Revival, plus lots of other news and views. The Share Hill climb takes place on the 7th of September at Sheer near Guildford. As I say, it is one of our favourites. We'll be there, so do come along and say hello. And they do have some tickets left. They've kept quite a few tickets back to sell on the day, on the door. So do come along, and it's a great day out. I'd like to thank James Newbold, who told us a bit more about Formula 3000, certainly than I knew. Thanks also to Mike Whittaker and Mike Jordan for their insights into the Goodwood Revival. To our friends at Goodwood for helping with all sorts of different parts of this show this month, and particularly to Josh Parsons for finding the time to sit down with me in what must be a really busy time for the whole GRRC team. And of course, a huge thanks to Nigel Mansell for a fascinating, and I have to say, pretty candid conversation that he had with you, Paul. As always, thank you to Paul Jurd and to the man who makes our disconnected ramblings have a degree of sense by stringing the show together, and that's Jim Roller. But none of this would be happening if it wasn't for you. So, as always, if you have been, thank you very much for listening.